So I'm going to jump over to Göbekli Tepe. I don't know if you guys know too much about it. I'm sure you do. It's a Taj Tepler site in Turkey. Taj Tepler simply means stone mounds or hills. And some of these sites are close to 12,000 years old. I've visited many of them along with Hugh Newman and my friend Andrew Collins. These sites do not just consist of artifacts that are on the ground, but they're related to the heavens. So there are many of these Taj Tepler sites, and they're famous for their T-shaped pillars. And this map shows some of them. There are many more now. So I'm going to be discussing the symbolism on the central twin pillars of the oldest circle at Göbekli Tepe, and it's Enclosure D. Somebody specifically asked me to go over this, so I added it in really quickly. And these pillars are known as 18 and 31. So this is pillar 18, and it's the first I'll be talking about. So the necklace pendant on pillar 18 seems to show an H-like symbol, but more likely it's two beings holding hands. And I postulate this is the constellation of Gemini. In Greek mythology, Gemini were known as the Dioscuri, or Castor and Pollux. Since all planets, as well as the sun and moon, which is shown below on Gemini, always move very closely along the virtual line of the ecliptic, all these orbiting bodies are regularly passing through a special asterism, which I'll mention later, in which the builders of Göbekli Tepe amazingly seem to precisely pinpoint with their symbolism. In some depictions of the constellation, the twins are even holding hands, just like the stone carving shown, and the virtual line of the ecliptic goes through the middle of the Gemini twins, shown by the dotted red line in the white image. So the sun and moon traveling through the Gemini twins, just like it does in the night sky or in the day, may be depicted here on the carving. So in the crook of the arm of pillar 18, it holds a fox or a dog. So let's look at what is next to Gemini in the night sky. So it's Canis Minor, which is known today as a dog. But in ancient times, it may have been seen as a fox, and it really doesn't matter. So the symbolism found at the base of the same pillar shows 7 water birds, or chicks. And I believe these 7 birds are the Pleiades star cluster in the constellation of Taurus. This cluster is commonly known as the 7 sisters, the 7 chicks, and almost always female. And in fact, some of the oldest stories that we know come from the Aboriginal Australians. And there, too, they were often known as 7 ladies. So this is pillar 18 again, and this is a combined view of the symbolism. And so let's look in the night sky fully where they are. So the red dots show you the 3 constellations and asterisms from the previous slides and where they are, including their placement near the ecliptic line. So if you were at Göbekli Tepe about 9600 BC, and you were standing between the central pillars of Enclosure D, staring south, the pillars 18 and 31, and you're looking the same way the pillars are actually facing, you would see the sun rising on the winter solstice, and it would be heralded by the Pleiades in Taurus. Now, this is a symbolism shown on the pillars, which is fantastic. Also, I want you to note their proximity to the Milky Way, and that these 3 constellations are all actually touching the Milky Way, which is interesting. So I'm going to look at that next pillar, pillar 31, and its symbolism. On this pillar's necklace is a pendant of a bull shown next to the white arrow here. I think this T-shaped pillar may be representing Orion, the mighty hunter, and Taurus, the bull. And as you can see, the image, Orion is right there next to Taurus, the bull. It kind of makes sense. But you have to keep in mind this is only speculation. Okay? Nobody knows for sure what's going on. And this is just showing you in the night sky what I just showed you on the previous pillar and the locations. And this is the complete area of the sky that I showed you of pillars 18 and 31, and it's really interesting where it's pointing to. And these areas mark spots as if they were guardians of the crossroads being the intersection of the Milky Way and the virtual ecliptic line. And all of these are touching the Milky Way. So I believe this is a very important thing for us to understand. So I noticed that the builders of Göbekli Tepe may also be portraying a very ancient asterism within the symbolism on the central twin pillars that I just discussed. This asterism is called the Golden Gate of the Ecliptic. An asterism, do you guys know what that is? Okay. An asterism is a pattern of stars that is not a constellation, but it can lie within a constellation. The Golden Gate of the Ecliptic asterism is in the constellation of Taurus, and it has been known about for thousands and thousands of years. It's marked by the two gold stars above. The asterism is built by the two eye-catching open star clusters of the Pleiades and the V-shaped Hyades that stand as sentinels on either side of the ecliptic line. And again, that's the area of the sky. If you were studying and observing, you would look. So it's the perfect astronomical observatory. Okay. So the ancients were able to predict celestial events like alignments, like the winter solstice that Hugh and I discovered in December of 2021. I'm not going to really elaborate on this in this talk because I think Hugh is going to cover that pretty deeply, even though I really want to talk about it. So I'll just skip that. So I'm going to talk about another example of the Golden Gate of the Ecliptic. So this limestone tablet was found at a site in Malta called Tal Hadi, and it's about 4,500 years old, give or take. The site is in ruins today, unfortunately. So the top image is the Tal Hadi sky tablet matched to the starry sky with the ecliptic line showing Taurus prominently. And the below image is an example of how the Tal Hadi sky tablet may have been used to measure the latitude of the moon and the planets. Now, it's very aggravating to me. I've been to Malta many, many times, and they have a wonderful national archaeology museum. And they have this stone tablet there. It's not big, it's quite small, but they have it in a dusty old glass case with just nothing really listed about it at all. And I think it really needs, these types of artifacts are overlooked all the time, but they really should do something about it. I think I may have written to them, but I have no response. I'm sure they get a lot of letters from crazy people like me. But so it's also my hypothesis that at the Lascaux Cave in France, in the Hall of the Bulls, that a Golden Gate of the Ecliptic asterism is featured on that wall. And that's, quite far back in time, more than 20,000 years, possibly. And it really makes sense that they would be marking this area. As I've beaten to you by now, that's the perfect point in the sky to look, to study the stars. And again, with Orion and his brightly shining 3 belt stars grabbing your attention, it really is the easiest one to notice. I have no doubt that many of these images created millennia ago don't just depict hunting or beautiful animal scenes, but show clear and intimate knowledge of the stars. They may not have left us a writing system that we would easily recognize today, but they definitely knew how to portray what they saw in the sky, and quite cleverly. We simply need to recognize what is right in front of us. So I'm going to go back to the crossing point for the Milky Way and the ecliptic line. So there are two of these intersections of the Milky Way and the ecliptic, the other being 180 degrees opposite. And that gate intersection is the Sagittarius gate, which my friend, many of you know, Andrew Collins, has talked about many times in his lectures. He wasn't really looking at the other side, so we kind of like combined and figured out, oh, this makes sense for the ancient sites we're looking at. So these gates are also known by many ancient cultures as the entry points to the road of the dead or the path of the souls. The ancient Greeks believed that the souls reside in the Milky Way between incarnations, and also believed that there were two gates on the Milky Way. And these very same beliefs are found across the world. So I'm going to jump back over to Göbekli Tepe, the previous site I discussed and its twin pillars. But it holds another very interesting stone in its circle, and this is Pillar 43, or the Vulture Stone. The layout of Enclosure D is shown in white above, and the location of the Vulture Stone is shown within the red circle. I think Pillar 43 was related to the winter solstice sunrise, and that an alignment will be found here in Enclosure D, and the Vulture Stone will play a prominent part in it. I believe on the morning of the winter solstice, the sun will rise between the two giant central stone pillars, numbered 31 and 18, and the sun's rays will move across, eventually touching Pillar 43. And this represents something very special, at least according to the symbolism carved on the front of this pillar. And actually, this December, Hugh and myself, we're going to be traveling back to Turkey to see if we're right. We're going to be involved in a pretty interesting documentary of sorts. So the symbolism of this stone. So start at the top section of this pillar. The ancient Mesopotamians regarded the sky as a series of three domes covering the rectangular flat earth. On this pillar, the three bags or basket-like structures probably relate to the three-tiered cosmos that shamans can travel to. You've probably seen this stone online many places as the ancient man bags and things like that. So the three-tiered cosmos includes the upper world, the middle world, and the lower world. And the animals shown on Pillar 43 are the ones you would actually expect to find if it was relating to the three-tiered cosmos. The bird for the upper world, feline for our world, or the middle world, and the frog or toad for the watery underworld. And serpents sometimes are used as well for the underworld. Actually, quite frequently they are. So this concept is found in ancient cultures across the world, including heavily in the Andean area, the South America, which I just arrived back from with Hugh from about a month-long trip from Chile, Bolivia, Peru, Easter Island. It's grueling. It's a grueling journey with the altitude, but it's well worth it.